The Turtle Beach Stealth Ultra is the most feature-packed controller for Xbox that I've ever gotten my hands on. It has durable components like Hall effect joysticks, mechanical buttons, and the connected command display, which lets you tweak its performance and settings right on the fly directly on the controller. But is all of that worth it at the $200 price point? Well, let's dive in and check it out. Hey everyone, I'm Jordan with 9 to 5 Toys, and in case you missed it on our live stream, I had a little bit of trouble getting the Stealth Ultra actually set up over at my PC. You can check out that video up here. And if you want to catch our live streams, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon to get notified when we are going live. Now, I might have been able to do it quicker and more seamlessly if I wasn't live on YouTube, but I was just surprised at the experience being not as seamless as what I would have expected it to be. Taking a quick look at what all comes included with the Stealth Ultra, in the box is a charging base station, a wireless dongle, a cable, and the case with a cable pass-through, and also some additional rubberized caps for the sticks. 2 of these are domed and 2 are recessed. And taking a look at the overall design of the Stealth Ultra from Turtle Beach, overall it looks good and it feels great. It definitely has a little bit more going on than like the standard Xbox controller, which are typically just one solid color. You can see there is RGB here in the grips, which can be customized directly from this display up on top of the controller here. So some pretty crazy features here that we're going to check out as we dive in deeper. It's also considerably lighter than like the Elite Series 2 from Xbox. Also on the front of the controller here, you find everything you would expect. We've got the Xbox button, we have the upload button, and then there's a plus button which activates the display up here. That's how you start interacting with all the different settings and features up here. Otherwise, on the front of the controller, we have the bumpers, the triggers, we have trigger locks. On the back, we have 4 mappable buttons, which once again can be mapped directly from the screen on the controller, which is really nice. And comfort-wise, ergonomics-wise, my hands feel right at home on the Stealth Ultra. It feels very comfortable for my hands. Everything feels really good, nothing feels out of the ordinary, and also with these back buttons, my middle fingers are resting directly on P1 and P4, which is great. I don't have to modify my grip at all to reach those, and we'll touch on those a little bit more further down. The grips do have a little bit of a textured material, but it's not as much as the kind of rubberized grip of the Elite controller. I feel like I have a more solid grip on the Elite because of that rubberized texture. It's a little bit more aggressive. On the Stealth Ultra, it's just a little bit lighter. It's nice to have it, but it's not as good as something like the Elite. All right, so now let's take a look at the screen and see what all is available in it. By pushing the plus key or plus button on the front of the controller, you can see that immediately you can start accessing some different functions in here. Press A to go into your socials and see different messages that pop up, or press Y to go and change all the different settings. And real quick, we will connect a headset here so you can see what the different headset controls are, because there are some audio functions built directly into this controller, which set it apart from a lot of other controllers. So with this plugged in now, you can see that there are more options right on the home screen. Not only do you have the main menu, but then you also have the ability to adjust the audio right on the fly. You can hit B to toggle through the different sound modes. You can hit X to mute or unmute your microphone, and you can use the back buttons to manipulate the chat and volume mix, as well as just the overall volume of the audio. Taking a look at what all is available on the screen, if we hit Y, you can see we go to Connect, which will allow you to connect different devices. This does obviously work on Xbox, also on PC, and you can use it on some other smart devices. Additionally, we have the system settings, which has firmware, calibration, where you can change your stick and your triggers. We have screen brightness, LED brightness, screen timeout, sleep timeout, power mode, charging LED, social alert color, reset to defaults, and that's it for that section. Next up, we have social, where you can see all of your social messages on here if you have it connected to a compatible device. Next up are profiles, so you can set different profiles and quickly swap between them. So that's great for different gamers, but then also maybe for different games as well, if you want to set something up for like an FPS game, but then also set something different for a racing game. Next up, you have the headset mixer. So here you have your overall volume, you can adjust your game and chat mix, mic monitoring, if you want to turn that up or down, mic gain, mic mute, And then you can adjust the sound mode. So there's a signature sound from Turtle Beach. You also have bass boost. You have bass and treble boost, which is more kind of like a scooped audio. You have voice boost, and then you have superhuman hearing. So this is Turtle Beach's mode that we've seen on a lot of other Turtle Beach gaming headsets, where you can basically enhance the frequencies that are better for picking up footsteps or gunshots, audio cues that are a little bit more important to pick up when you are gaming. So it's not the most natural sound, but if you are playing more competitively and really want to hear what's going on around you, I have found that superhuman hearing mode is beneficial for that. For most gaming modes though, I would use the signature sound, which for me sounds great coming out of here. It's very natural, not too bass heavy, not too treble heavy, but just has enough presence and enough sound. That's my preferred sound mode. Next up, we have the buttons. Hitting this one, you can change all the different mappings for the 4 buttons on the back. You just click on it, and then you can choose which one you want. So we have A, B, X, and Y. Left trigger, left bumper, right bumper. The left stick button, right stick button. We also have the D-pad controls, and then we have Pro Aim. And Pro Aim is kind of like a DPI switch on a mouse. So if you use this, then that will change your sensitivity so that maybe if you are using a sniper rifle in an FPS game, you can adjust the sensitivity and get a little bit more accuracy there. Next up, we have the axis mapping. So if we go into this, hit left stick, you can adjust the response, which you can make it linear. You can make it more precise, where in this mode it sets an S-curve so that, if you are just moving the stick a little bit, it won't be as sensitive, but as you get closer to the edges, it gets more sensitive. So a little bit more focus on precision rather than speed. Whereas fast is the opposite, where it's going to ramp up your stick input very quickly when you start moving it, but then even out towards the end. And then of course standard is just linear. And then you can also adjust the dead zone. So right here it's at 5, we can take it down to 0. It adjusts in 5% increments, can go all the way up to 100. But with this controller, with the Hall effect sensors on the sticks, you can go to 0, and I've had a great experience just using the dead zone on 0 here, which that's something that can't be said for every controller out there. You can also adjust the triggers if you want to change the dead zone on that. We can also change the vibration. You can customize the left side, left trigger, right trigger. So you can turn those up or down as much as you need to. Personally, I really like having the triggers vibrate when I am playing racing games like Forza Horizon 5 or Forza Motorsport. I think that's a great addition in here. And then we have lighting. So this is where you can change the color. And as I'm hitting different buttons, you can see it is just changing the RGB of the controller here. You can also set different effects if you want it to be static, breathing, color cycle, linear pulse, dynamic, and you can also change the effect speed to make it faster or slower. And then we have App Link, so you can connect this to your phone and control a lot of things there, and obviously get your messages from like that Socials tab in here as well. And basically all of these controls are also available on the app on a PC or Xbox, but honestly, I've had a better experience tweaking everything on the controller itself than on the app. The app has been a little bit glitchy. Once again, you can see in our live video that we did of the unboxing and first initial setup that I had a little bit of trouble getting it set up there. Now that I have everything set up and figured out and all the firmware up to date, it's working fine. But getting it set up was a little bit tricky, and you can adjust everything from the controller itself, which is pretty incredible. Okay, so now let's move on to the other main feature of this controller, I think, and that is the Hall effect sticks. Now, in theory, these thumbsticks, joysticks, should hold up better over time than the standard sticks that you find in like the Elite controller or the standard Xbox controller. That's because the sensors don't have any contact points, so there's nothing in there to wear down or wear out. I've also found them to be extremely precise, and the dead zones on here can be turned down to 0, and the sticks work phenomenally. So actually using these with the friction rings around the sticks here, it feels very smooth, very easy to use. And when I am actually using these in game, they feel incredible, very responsive. Being able to turn those dead zones down to 0, gameplay just feels very responsive. And running it on GamepadTester.com gave some of the best results I've seen for circularity. And we saw that you can adjust the dead zones from here directly from the command display, depending on what game you're playing or what kind of experience you're going for. These sticks definitely are the real deal. And for somebody who's, had problems with stick drift in the past and are looking for a more quality controller that won't have those same issues, so far, this definitely seems like the way to go if you are looking for something that's premium with a ton of extra features. Moving on to the triggers, while the full trigger pull is slightly shorter than the full trigger pull of like the Elite or the standard Xbox controller, these feel great in here as well, and they can be shortened with a little flip of a switch right here. And it makes the trigger pull very short. So for FPS games or anything else where you just want a really quick pull, that works very well. And talking about the bumpers real quick, they have a mechanical switch just like the rest of the buttons up here. And they have the same pretty aggressive texture that you find on the triggers as well, which means it doesn't feel like your finger's gonna slip off. It feels really nice when you are using those. And I love these mechanical buttons because it doesn't feel mushy. It feels snappy, it feels precise. So some great feeling bumpers on here. And like many of its competitors these days, I'm gonna unplug the headset here, there are back buttons as well. There are 4 of them. Now it has a layout instead of paddles like you would find on the Elite controller if you have the paddles installed. There's just 4 buttons across the back here. And for me, P1 and P4 are right underneath my middle fingers. They feel great. Perfect placement for me. P2 and P3 take a little bit more effort for me to move my hand and reach those. It's not as natural as something like the Elite where my fingers sit perfectly on the 4 paddles and I don't have to adjust anything with my hand. There is a slight adjustment needed here. So personally, I still prefer the paddle system, although when it comes to back buttons, this is one of the better implementations that I've seen. We talked about it with the GameSir G7 SE, which is a very budget controller. It is wired. Also has Hall effect sensors, but these are perfectly placed back here, and the Stealth Ultra feels like those are in the perfect placement as well. So I really like those, even though I typically still prefer the paddle setup of like an Elite controller. And moving on to the face buttons, if you like the feel of a mechanical button, a mechanical switch, you're gonna love these. They aren't as mushy as things you would find on like the Elite or the standard Xbox, but give a nice, snappy, tactile feel when you do press them. So they're really great. They feel good to use. They sound good. With the Elite controller from Microsoft, you can see in my review of this that I still have issues with this controller, even though it was brand new, and this is the core version that came out recently. So bummer that something that's premium like this doesn't work very well, but I've had no issues so far with the Stealth Ultra, and these buttons just feel great on here. Feels like the same kind of micro switch as what we find in the bumpers, and also over on the D-pad, which also has the same nice tactile clicky sound to it. My only complaint with the D-pad is that there's just a little bit of slop to it where it almost feels like you're pushing the button, but you're not quite. So if you don't press it hard enough, you won't actually activate it. So there have been a couple times where it kind of feels like I'm pushing it, but I need to push it just a little bit further. So I'd like to see that slop kind of removed or, figured out with that, but otherwise, it works well. I like how it's nice and tactile. You'll see on here that the diagonals are a little bit smaller and a little more recessed, which is something that's different than like the Elite Series 2. Diagonals are much more prevalent, easier to hit on something like this. But it is much better than what you would find on like the GameSir G7 SE, which just has the 4. This would be much harder to press. So depending on what kind of game you play, what kind of games you're really into, that might be a good thing, that might be a deal breaker. You'll have to decide for yourself whether or not that's something you really need. Moving on to battery life. This is one of the features here that Turtle Beach claims it doesn't quite stand up, that could be, that is really frustrating. Turtle Beach is claiming 30 hours, but this controller's been out. It's already in the hands of people. And a lot of people are saying a lot less time than that, like 6 to 8 hours of runtime on here. Now you can, lower the brightness and adjust some of the power options to try to make that last longer. But that's a pretty big battery difference. Granted, one of the benefits here is that, with the charging dock, when you're done with it, as long as you just set it down there and, leave it to charge, it'll be fully charged up and ready to go for you every time you pick it up. But those battery differences that people are reporting is pretty significant and definitely isn't what you want to hear. Considering that this controller is so light, quite a bit lighter than like the Elite Series 2, you wonder, why didn't they just make the battery a little bit bigger, something that could actually keep up with another controller a little bit easier. That's a bummer there with battery life. Even I believe that 6 to 8 hours would be enough for most people, but of course there are going to be some people who are using it for longer times or, passing controller off to other people. So something to consider with how you plan on using this controller. So overall, the Stealth Ultra is a great feeling controller. When you are actually gaming with it, it's a great experience. The sticks feel awesome, the buttons feel awesome, the back buttons are nearly perfectly placed for me. Triggers feel good. You can, make very quick adjustments on the screen here, which actually is kind of nice if you want to dial in your back buttons very quickly, or adjust your dead zone, or adjust your audio quickly from the screen right here. That being said, for $200, I wish it was a little bit more refined. The setup and app experience didn't leave a good first impression when I got that all set up. So I wish that was a little bit better. I wish that the D-pad felt a little bit better, more in line with the rest of the controller. But once again, once everything is set up and working, this controller feels great to use. The sticks are probably the best that I've ever tried in any controller, and they should hold up for the test of time thanks to those Hall effect sensors. So when it comes down to it, if you have the funds and you want a premium feature-packed controller that will outlive the competition, the Stealth Ultra seems like a great way to go. Alright, and that's going to do it for our review of the Turtle Beach Stealth Ultra. Let us know what you think about it down in the comments below. And if you want to make sure to catch our live streams where you can see things like unboxing, live comparisons, and even playing some games like Forza or Battlefield, make sure you are subscribed, hit that bell icon, and you'll get notified when we are going live. And if you're looking for some other videos to watch, I'll link to our review of the GameSir G7 SE. Also has Hall effect sticks and at an incredible price point of just $45, as well as our most recent video. And thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up so others can find it easier, and consider subscribing. This is Jordan with 9to5 Toys.